And we had a list, and somebody, this is the funny thing, I don't remember, no one remembers who said the Black Crows, but there was a yellow pad from Legal Pad and Sharpie, and there was a bunch of names on it that we were trying. And we wanted to be the Crows, something Crows. And then we couldn't come up with one, so we said, we were just like, well, fuck it, we'll just be Mr. Crow's Garden. And then at some point, the label, that we had signed with, which was owned by Rick Rubin, who we'd never met, only had heard of him, he said, look, you got to have a better name. That Mr. Crow's Garden name sucks. And when we heard it from him, we were like, no, fuck you. This is our name. But then, because we had to make a point. We weren't going to, let the man tell us what to do. And then I think, if I remember it correctly, he said, well, I won't put your record out. And then we went, oh, well, in that case, let's change the name. It really wasn't that simple. It was like, well, we think you should. And then we really were thinking about it going, yeah, I mean, it is a fucking terrible name. So then we went back and the Black Crows came up again. And I just remember thinking, well, what crow isn't black? That's a fucking stupid name. But then it stuck. Like the next day I was like, the Black Crows. Oh, that actually kind of makes sense. Cause we were going with, like, our flyers always had crows on them. We had already taken the crows thing on. So we just said, well, and we had spelled Mr. Crow's Garden Crowe like that. So we kept that to be difficult. And that was it. We were in Rome, Georgia at a bar called Shannon's, and we all said, okay, we'll do the Black Crows. And we called George on a payphone collect to say, okay, we're called the Black Crows now. And then he was like, cool, let's do that.
I bought a hot dog from who? George Coolius. Made famous in Paul's Boutique, right?
The very same.
What are some of the alternative band names that didn't make the cut that you can remember?
I remember the Stone Cold Crows. So that was a suggestion.
And then WWF took it instead.
Exactly. And then there was
Stone Cold Crows is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. The Crow just got brass knuckles, punching his fist into his wing.
I don't know where it was. There was someone had the idea that a cool band name, and I haven't thought of this in years, was Gasoline, which actually that could be a good name.
I like Gasoline.
Yeah, Gasoline could be kind of cool. But no. There's the HT Hackney Company, for those of you keeping score, which is not the same as the Hackett Company, but it's close.
You mean the Buddy Hackett? I love Tennessee. Andrew Jackson was from here, and then he killed every Indian he ever met by coughing on him.
I appreciate you saying that, because every time I see the signs for his place, the Hermitage, I think, at the end of the day, just a genocidal maniac.
And also one of the few presidents who actually got shot, Teddy Roosevelt, I guess, being the other, shot and lived. You know that one?
I've heard tale, yes.
Yeah, he got in like a barroom brawl. He looks just like Don Imus, like identical. And he had like a British accent and red hair, and he was in a barroom brawl with a guy, and the guy just fucking shot him, and I think stabbed him in the leg with like a super James Bond cane, and he just like knew it wasn't presidential to go down, so he walked it off all the way to the doctor's office. Who's the other president? Little trivia for Steve Gorman, drummer from the Black Crows, host of Steve Gorman Sports on, what's the network?
102.5 The Game. And that show is on Monday through Friday, 2 to 3 Central, and you can listen to it at 1025thegame.com.
Who's the other U.S. president that got shot and lived?
Let's see. JFK did Hot Shots, but that's different. Hang on. Teddy Roosevelt.
Nice job, buddy boy.
You actually already tipped that one off.
I did?
Yeah, you already said that. I had no idea.
Did I say Teddy Roosevelt? He was giving a speech. He had like a Bible and a flask in his pocket, his breast pocket, and somebody shot him from the audience, and it hit the flask and the Bible, and he just looked down like, what the heck's going on here? And then he just kept doing his speech, and out of that became the Bull Moose Party, because the newspaper said, Teddy Roosevelt strong as a bull moose. Bull Moose, a better name than the Rough and Tumble Crows or whatever the fuck that shit was.
You know what? If I saw a band called the Bull Moose, I'd have to go check that out.
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
That's exactly right. I tell you a great band name. My man Nicky G always said it'd take a special band to pull it off, but you get a band and the logo is just like a rooster with muscles, and you call it Cockstrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What do you think are the best band names of all time?
I think a lot of the best band names are really bad. You know, they're the names when you first hear it, you go, it's so bad that you can never I remember thinking, I think about bands you've heard of the first time, like The Police. I mean, just imagine if you'd never heard of a band called The Police, and somebody goes, "Oh, there's a band called The Police." You'd go, "That's the stupidest fucking name I've ever heard."
Or if you're in a band and somebody goes, "How about we call ourselves The Police?"
Yeah, you'd be like, "Are you no, The Police?"
But what about the Stone Cold Black Crowes?
Legendarily horrible. Just off the chart bad.
Both hands, by the way, came up the steering wheel so he can wave with emphasis.
No good.
You like the Police name?
Well, it's a great band name because it's just one of those words that, you know, I don't know if it's a great name, but I like the names that you first hear it, you go, seriously? And then it's like, but then it's locked in, you can never look back. I mean, REM, you know, U2, there's some really iconic bands that the first time you heard the name, you were like, it was what? It's REM. What is U2? I mean, I knew what a U2 was, but then I was a geek when I was in 9th grade, so I knew what that was.
U2, in case you're wondering, is a mobile catheter. It's you see commercials for it now. It's the plastic bendy catheter for when you need to cath on the go. My favorites are Soundgarden. Radiohead is up there. And then I said one on your show, and I forget what it was. Bad Brains is pretty good. I forget, but I think Soundgarden way up there for a band name. This will be a hashtag delight for everybody. And your Twitter is what?
At S. Gorman Sports, and that's spelled just like it should be.
The Police, you're a drummer. It seems weird to me that a drummer and a bassist could argue so much like they do in The Police. Do you think, Copeland is his name? Do you think he's fucking up time, or is Sting fucking up time?
Nah, Stuart Copeland, he's not fucking up anything. I mean, it's Sting. He's not a bassist, he's Sting. Come on, man. I mean, it was like, that's not the average rhythm section. He's an adult who calls himself Sting. There's gonna be a problem there.
So I take it you're a big fan of The Edge.
The Edge, but you were throwing a little corn at Bono tonight on stage, I noticed, going with his birth name of Paul.
Yeah, I only call him Paul on stage.
And The Edge's name, are you aware of that?
I forgot.
I believe it's Dave Evans.
It is Dave Evans, thank you. The thing with U2, I said on stage was, and you guys have heard other Bono jokes I've had, but a lot of new material. I'm excited about it. It's like U2. Look, I don't, this is not a popular stance. I don't really care about Africa. I mean, I do, but I really kind of don't give a shit about what's happening in Africa because it's across the world. And I know you guys are like, JJ, that's fucked up. You can't say that. But you know what? I see homeless people in Santa Monica and Venice every day who look like they could use a shave and a shower 2 bits. So Bono eliminates a third of Africa's debt. I've never seen one black guy at a U2 concert. You would think there'd be one guy in a dashiki barefoot holding a rock yelling, the streets have no name where I live too. I don't know why I sounded like Sacha Baron Cohen in The Dictator just then, which I watched last night, and I give it a thumbs up, by the way. So, okay. So Stuart Copeland, one of your favorite drummers?
I don't have him on the short list, but when I hear it or when anyone mentions him, I think, oh, that guy's awesome. Yeah, he's great.
How many people are on a short list? 5?
The ultimate short list is 2. It's Ringo and Bonham. That's enough for me. But then I can expand that to 5 pretty quick.
Go ahead.
Jody Stevens from Big Star, big on me. A lot of the drummers.
September girls, that's so much.
When I got I moved to Atlanta in 1987. I bought my first drum kit. I was 21.
Fucking Big Star. No one ever pulls a Big Star reference out but me.
One of the great rock and roll bands of all time, in my opinion.
One of the great never made a dime rock and roll bands of all time.
Never made a dime. They did more than not make money. They burned other people's money, but that was other people's fault. But I got a drum. I didn't listen to Zeppelin growing up. I spent the 70s and 80s listening to new wave and punk and a lot of that stuff. And by the time I would have been listening to Zeppelin and AC/DC and a lot of like what's now classic rock, that was all the guys in the pickup trucks and at the mall parking lot that would have wanted to put their foot up my ass. So I wanted to listen to Oingo Boingo and shit like that.
Hey, do you have the new Depeche Mode album?
Yeah, but it sucks. That is for Kevin McDonald.
All right.
And so anyway, long story short, I didn't start playing drums till I played literally a handful of times. I got my first drum kit. I was 21. I had a late start. Yeah, when I moved to Atlanta in 1987, I bought my first kit.
What made you decide, like, you know what, I should buy this cumbersome, amazing thing that'll annoy my neighbors? You could have gotten a harmonica like everybody else.
I wanted to play from, my whole life. Just didn't really get the opportunity. I was playing a lot of sports and listening to a lot of records. I didn't get around to the drum kit. But it was that thing, like, when I was 5 or 6 at the latest, I saw a drummer on TV and I went, oh, I could do that. Like, I should do that. And it just took a long time for me to get around to actually doing it. But once I did, I got to college, I sat at a drum kit and started playing it. I was like, fuck, I knew I could do that. And so
you picked it up right away.
Yeah. And so I was needing a reason to drop out of college, and a buddy of mine said, I moved to Atlanta, I'm starting a band. He goes, you're playing drums now, right? And I was like, oh, yeah. I mean, I'm fucking all over it. And I dropped out of school and moved to Atlanta. I took the Greyhound bus to Atlanta in February of 1987. And
I think that's the opening lyrics to your guys' next track.
That's it. And Chris Robinson picked me up at the Greyhound bus station, who I'd never met. But he was the only guy that was going to live in a house. A bunch of us, he had a car. So it's kind of funny to think that he was the guy who could make it happen to come pick me up. And we met that day, and then I bought a drum kit like a couple weeks later and started playing. And so it was at that moment that I started listening to two bands, Led Zeppelin and Big Star, a lot. And so as I was learning to play, I was listening to those two bands more than anything else. And so it really, like, I knew I had Ringo down, I had the Beatles stuff down for life, I'd heard all that, and I still think he's as musical as any drummer's ever been in rock music. I think he's perfect. But the Bonham and Jody Stevens, when I was listening to those records, I really thought, both those guys, I was like, this is what it sounds like in my head. You know what I mean? Like this, that's what I got to get to. And I don't know that I ever have, but I've certainly been trying. I mean, like, literally, like, the better I get and the more I've learned for 25 years now, the better Bonham keeps getting. Like we started off and we were like this far apart, and we're still that far. You know, it's like every time I figure something out, I learn more and more about, and he's right there. And
so Bonham's one, Ringo's two?
It's not chops, it's just feel. And it's, and I can explain it and break it all down, and I understand what's this and what's that. But just on a visceral gut level, yeah, Bonham and Ringo are just, they're just perfect in those bands. More, as much as anybody could be, they're irreplaceable and perfect for what they did. And at the end of the day, look at the scoreboard. Beatles and Led Zeppelin. I mean, they kind of won the game, you know.
All right, and then you got Jodie Foster from The Accused. Oh, no, Jody Davis from Big Star, right? Jody Stevens. What did I say? Jody, leave me alone. Jody Stevens. I'm in a 99 Volvo. I'm afraid for my life here. All right, so give us the rest of the elongated short list, the long short list. Jody Stevens.
I don't know. I'd say,
no order.
Yeah, who have I I'm trying to think. He's in he's in the long list.
Top 12?
Sure.
But people we've heard of. You're going to go, like, deep into, like, there was this one guy in Rome. He used to drum out of the fucking backseat of his Chevy. He was pretty rad.
I can say this. There was a dude, my one total unknown is there was a band in Atlanta back then called 86. And their drummer scared the shit out of me. He was so good. It made me not want to play. And I can't even think of his name right now. Max. I don't know. He was great. I didn't know him. I'm just trying to think of the big names of the guys who are great. You know who no one ever mentions, and again, perfect, is Densmore from The Doors. He's a fucking great drummer. I love John Densmore's playing.
On your show, I forgot his name because I suck. The drummer for Sabbath, to me, seems a little ahead of his time.
Yeah, we talked about that. I've really, and I'm not being like difficult. I've never listened to Black Sabbath. I don't know their albums at all. I've heard a couple things on the radio that you always hear, but that's really all I know. I've not listened to. There's two things that are equally not present in my life, and that would be pretty much heavy metal and or rap. Never never got into either of the most important genres of music in the last 20 years.
I'm going to name drummers from super popular bands. Larry Mullen Jr. U2.
I hear he has an identical twin brother.
Great drummer? All right, fair enough.
I don't know anyone that ever said, oh, man, he's great. But again, I look at it like that band is, we were in Rome, Georgia, at a bar called Shannon's, and we all said, okay, we'll do the Black Crowes. And we called George on a payphone collect to say, okay, we're called the Black Crowes now. And then he was like, cool, let's do that.
I bought a hot dog from who? George Coolius. Made famous in Paul's Boutique, right?
The very same.
What are some of the...
And then I think, if I remember it correctly, he said, well, I won't put your record out. And then we went, oh, well, in that case, let's change the name. It really wasn't that simple. It was like, well, we think you should. And then we really were thinking about it going, yeah, I mean, it is a fucking terrible name. So then we went back and the Black Crowes came up again. And I just remember thinking, well, what crow isn't? And we had a list, and somebody, this is the funny thing, I don't remember, no one remembers who said the Black Crowes, but there was a yellow pad from Legal Pad and Sharpie, and there was a bunch of names on it that we were trying. And we wanted to be the Crows, something Crows. And then we couldn't come up with one, so we said, we were just like, well, fuck it, we'll just be Mr. Crow's Garden. And then at some point, the label, that we had signed with, which was owned by Rick Rubin, who we'd never met, only had heard of him, he said, look, you got to have a better name. That Mr. Crow's Garden name sucks. And when we heard it from him, we were like, no, fuck you. This is our name. But then, because we had to make a point. We weren't going to, let the man tell us what to do. Black. That's a fucking stupid name. But then it stuck. Like the next day, I was like, the Black Crowes. Oh, that actually kind of makes sense. Because we were going with, like, our flyers always had crows on them. We had already taken the crows thing on. So we just said, well, and we had spelled Mr. Crow's Garden Crowe like that. So we kept that to be difficult. And that was it. It was